Arc 7, Chapter 5. Being a Man is Tough. Part 1. Subaru. Wow. Oh. Question mark, question mark, question mark. Kia. Subaru-sama, I'm so sorry. Splashing and splattering, Subaru was showered by water that cascaded down from above his head. As he let out a cry of alarm, wondering what the heck was going on, an apology from a high-pitched voice flew towards him. When Subaru glanced up while shaking his head, he saw the curtains swaying from an open window, and his gaze mingled with the girl's, Petra's, who was looking down at him from above. It seemed like it was right when Petra threw some water out the window on the second floor. Of course, she wouldn't do anything ill-behaved, such as dumping water onto the garden. She threw the water onto the edge of the flower bed to make sure no one would be splashed by it. And yet, unluckily, I was gardening right there. I'm sorry, Subaru-sama. I'll bring a change of clothes right away. You don't have to do that much. Getting drenched was the only thing that happened, and... It fricking stinks! Getting drenched wasn't the only thing that happened. Because it's water I was using to clean the room, and... Anyways, I'll get going right now. Wait for me at the watering place. Petra said to Subaru, who was astounded by the smell of dirty water poured all over him. Like that, her adorable face was withdrawn to the other side of the window, and she started running to fetch him extra clothes, her footsteps pattering against the floor. Subaru smiled wryly at the panicking Petra, deepening due to his own rotten luck. He headed towards the watering palace at the garden of the mansion, just as Petra had told him to do so. Well, I was planning on changing my clothes once I finished gardening anyway. Subaru consoled himself with the fact his plans were only brought forward a tiny bit. If Petra was going to bring a change of clothes, then he should wash the dirt off himself first. Before drawing up water from the well here, he flung off his shirt with haste. You're quite daring, getting undressed so suddenly. Wait, Kya! Whoa, to think that you would let out a scream compared to a girl's. Normally, wouldn't you think our positions would be reversed? Saying that, and staring at the screaming Subaru, was a pink-haired girl, old woman Ryuzu, who was sitting on the garden rock next to the watering place. She looked at Subaru, who covered the exposed upper half of his body by hugging his shirt to his chest, her intellectual eyes shimmering in contrast to her awfully young appearance. You don't have to hide it like that. I've gotten used to seeing the naked body of a boy. I used to live with Gabo, you see. Well, you might be right, but what's embarrassing is embarrassing, right? There's nothing to be embarrassed about. Besides, your physique is not too bad as well, Subar. It's quite pleasing to the eye. Pleasing to the eye indeed. It's embarrassing after all. Ryuzu-san, aren't you acting out of character? Ryuzu was characterized by a behaviour that didn't match up with her appearance, like a calm and relaxed manner of speech. But she left a strong impression on Subaru with how everything about her, except her looks, were faithful to the role she was entrusted with. It was why he was surprised when she poked fun at Subaru, referring to the naked half of his body. Am I right in guessing this is mostly because you were released from the heavy responsibility of being the leader of the sanctuary? I suppose there's that aspect to a considerable degree. Although I went outside the sanctuary, I moved on to land Rosbo had prepared, and a similar position was handed over to me. So if I'd asked myself if a load had been lifted off my shoulders, then... Ryuzu said, directing her narrowed eyes behind her, towards the mansion. Specifically, she wasn't looking at the mansion, but she was looking at the people living inside of it. To be even more specific, she was probably gazing at the siblings consisting of an older sister and a younger brother, who both she loved like her own grandchildren. With the reconciliation between Garfield and Frederica having been finished, Garfield was also freed of the cross he had been bearing for ages. Though Subaru was surprised he turned into a brat that was mischievous beyond his expectations as a result of being freed from his burdens. Do you feel lonely living separately from Garfield and Frederica? What got you into this all of a sudden? Was it too sudden? But I thought about it, of course. It would be a great help if they stayed in the mansion together for Amelia Tan's royal selection, but... It can't be helped. In order to live in the mansion, there are many problems for me, of course. And also for the other clones. My sisters. I don't think we can be of use as well. Subaru. ... Ryuza answered him with a small laugh, and Subaru closed his mouth as he heard her speak. I wasn't talking about you being useful or useless, the emotional side of Subaru wanted to shout. However, the details of this couldn't be reasoned with anything like a child's tantrum. In the current Roswell mansion, the people who were permitted to stay were only those that actively took a role and could fulfill their responsibilities. During times like these, it was necessary to have severe regulations to that extent. Still, Garfield is 14. He's still a kid, you know. You're a kind one. Are you worried about Gabo? Well, yeah. When I myself was 14, I was immature, a stupid brat. Even now, the stupid brat part hasn't changed. But I used to be worse. To the point I would be fed up with myself, because I think I wouldn't even be able to do anything if I got separated from my parents. Of course, in direct opposition to the norm in this world, Subaru had experienced a loose and lenient daily life, something peaceful that was as good as being rocked from side to side in a cradle. Garfield was 14 years old. Even if he was around the age of a middle schooler, it didn't apply to this world, and Garfield was far more mature than Subaru was his age. Even so, what others did for you could also be done for them as well, is what I think. Foo-foo, let me rephrase what I said. Not only are you cold, but you're soft and green too. I know a famous passage of writing that says men should not only be strong, but be also kind, huh? Going by this logic, I'm not a man because I'm not strong. What am I? Seeing Subaru unable to defend himself from what he had brought upon himself, the sound of laughter rumbled in Ryuza's throat. Subaru thought of her reaction as something unexpected, and she wiped the corners of her eyes with her finger, saying, Sorry. I understand what you want to say. I'll drop by from time to time to make sure Gabo and Frederica won't feel so lonely. Is that all right? Sorry. It was probably Sorry. It probably seemed like an outsider was pestering you about it. You have nothing to apologise for. It's just, if it's about a very young child who hasn't reached the age of maturity yet, leaving their parents, there's someone younger than Gabo in this mansion, isn't there? Are you? Right after Subaru made a guess about who Ryuza was referring to, a set of footsteps approached them. When he and Ryuza turned their eyes to the direction of the sound, they saw Petra running towards them. Petra held a pair of extra clothes for Subaru in her hands, calling out, Subaru-sama! As she rushed over to him, seemingly full of energy, however, she stopped immediately before setting foot on the watering place. Wah, kya! Subaru, why are you naked? Ah, shoot. I was planning on bathing, but I got too forced into this deep conversation. Petra blushed, commenting on Subaru's half-naked body, while covering her face with both her hands. However, she was staring at him from the space between the fingers that hid her face, with Subaru noting it as a common turn of events, something he often saw in mediums such as anime and manga. Even Petra's ears were a bright red colour as she cried out, rather excitedly. Look, Ryuza-san, this is what you call an adolescent girl's cute reaction. You're being fairly greedy telling me to act like that. It's no use, even if I do that in the first place. I'm an elderly person. You don't really feel like an elderly person, aside from your mature way of speaking. Responding to Ryuza's easygoing voice, Subaru heaved up a pail of water from the well. He then dumped the ice-cold water onto his head, exclaiming, Ah, cold! Anyway, that reaction of yours was pretty adult-like for your age, Petra. Ah, Subaru-sama, you're still treating me like a child, aren't you? I'm just saying, but I recently became 13-year-old. A 1-year difference from Garth-san. Even if you had to do that with birthdays, the fact that there's a 1-year difference between Petra and Garfield feels kind of amusing to me. There was Garfield, whose combat strength and appearance didn't really seem like that of a 14-year-old's, yet his personality did. Then there was Petra, who was like a bud that was gradually trying to bloom into a flower, retaining her young and adorable looks. It was the natural course of things because time flew by and it couldn't be stopped either. But the concept of growth was a precious notion. Subaru. I'm, 18, and Amelia Tan and Biko don't go for any changes in their appearance. In that regard, I feel a great amount of potential from Petra. Ryuzo. Subo. Is it alright for a teenager to look at things from a perspective like that? Even if you tell me that. Oh, thanks for the extra clothes, Petra. They fell out of your hands while you were staring at me, though. Shaking his head to get the water out of his hair, Subaru picked up the shirt dropped at Petra's feet and wore it after brushing the specks of soil off it. Petra seems to have realised she dropped his change of clothes just now, uttering a "Wah!" as she flushed at her own blunder. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry about your extra clothes and the water from before. Nah, it's just a cute little mistake. Settling on the topic of my clothes aside, I got soaked because I was unlucky, and because of that, I showed off an unseemly side of myself to 2 maidens. You counted me as a maiden. Well, you're good at flirting with the elderly. Subaru laughed wryly at Yuzu, who gave a slow shake of her head. Her behaviour the same as usual. After that, he gently patted Petra on the head, who was still reflecting upon herself, smiling at her with a, "It's okay. Everyone makes mistakes once in a while, and it's not like anyone got injured by it. There's no problem at all." Yes, I understand. I'll make sure to write it in today's entry for my diary. Oh, you're writing a diary? That's great. I'm the type of person that's good at keeping it little by little every day, but my diaries never last no matter what I do. He was able to make his daily workouts and jogging into a habit for every single day, but strangely enough, his diaries really didn't last long. He thought it was possible because the contents of what he wrote every day weren't consistent. Adding to that, his days of truancy were monotonous and boring, so he had nothing to write back then. Though, my Biko lovely diary is still ongoing. Are you trying to show it to Beatrice-chan later? Yeah, I want to show how much I'm spoiling her with tenderness on a daily basis to her. Not only that, but Beatrice's reactions were dramatic and adorable. If it meant being affectionate towards Biko, then Subaru would gladly challenge himself to overcome his own weakness of not being able to continue writing his diaries. Anyhow, so what were you two talking about? It's just some idle talk. Something like, aren't you lonely that you get separated from Garfield, and stuff like that. But you're also far away from your dad and mum. You don't get homesick or anything, do you, Petra? Homesick? Are you asking me if I miss my home? Placing a finger on her lips, Petra furrowed her brow as she decoded and made sense of Subaru's word. She looked to be deep in thought, mumbling, let me think. Sometimes I do feel lonely, but it's what I've decided I want to do, and I'm doing it right now. I can't be whining. Whoa, so mature. Did you hear that, Ryuza-san? I heard it. Gee, you look as if you're so proud of her, eh? Ryuza nodded at Subaru, who turned around, genuinely proud of Petra's confident answer. It was just as Petra had said. He was also in the middle of trying to accomplish what he had resolved to do. If so, instead of making feeble complaints, he needed to raise his head and smile, even if he were to be in agony and pain. Subaru-san, was my answer all right? Yeah, of course. As expected of Petra, it's the answer I wanted. Kya? In response to the question from the worried-looking Petra, Subaru lifted her body up in his arms. It was the same feeling as when he did to Biko, but Petra was heavier compared to her. It was because she was undergoing growth. You're not at the age where I can carry you anymore, huh? That's obvious, but if you're going to have such a sudden face, I guess I can keep you company. Oh, thanks. Although she turned her face away from him, she was allowing him to be selfish. Taking advantage of Petra's kindness, Subaru spent some more time lamenting over parting ways with her childhood. Gazing at the two of them was, well, I'm clueless about which one is the child in this. Yuzu, who murmured that out with a young visage in the mannerly of an elderly person.